Oh, yeah.
Oh, the
Antique
touchpad.
And the touchpads.
Good morning. So I'm going to put the Sutta reference here. There it is. Whoops. It repeated itself several times. I don't know why.
For each of the channels that it's streaming to.
Oh, okay. All right. So there. I guess we can start. A few people are starting to say good morning and hello. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. So I've put good morning everyone who's checking in. I put the reference number to the sutta that we're going to be discussing this morning in the chat, and it's in the Connected Discourses of the Buddha. I have the hard copy, and I'm going to be looking at Bhante Sujato's translation also. This is Connected Discourses of the Buddha, and so that's SN, and then the Samyutta is 42, and the Sutta is 8. So it's SN 42.8. That's how you can find it. And I think I said the simile of the conch blower. And this is a conversation that the Lord Buddha is having with this headman. The headman is kind of a village leader. Bhante Sujato is translated headman as chief. So a leader or a chief or the head person in a village, kind of like a mayor or something like that. So he is, this headman is Asibandika, and he's Asibandika's son. It's a Asibandika Puta, which Puta's son. Sorry, it's not a Spanish cuss word, please. So anyway, so I will start reading. I'm going to read from starting out with Bhante Sujato's translation, and then I'm going to jump over to Bhante Bodhi, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation at a certain point, because it starts out pretty much the same, a little bit different wording, except for I do want to say, maybe I should just read the first paragraph and then start reading from Bhante Sujato's, because it says, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Nalanda in Pararika's mango grove, and then Asibandika Putta, the headman, a lay disciple of the Niganthas, and that Bhante Sujato says Jain, so that's what we understand the Niganthas to be, approached the Blessed One. The Blessed One then said to him as he was sitting to one side, "In what way, headman, does Nigantha Nataputta teach the Dhamma to his disciples?" So this is the head of the Jains, the leader of the Jains, their spiritual leader. Okay. And then you'll see if you have Sutta Central in front of you that Bhante Sujata has translated the question that the Lord Buddha has asked as, Chief, how does the Jain ascetic of Nyatika clan teach his disciples? So probably Bhante Sujata has done some research, and then that's what he's come up with. It's how we would speak about it in modern terms. So then the headman Asibandika Putta responds, Sir, this is how the Jain Nyatika teaches his disciples. Anyone who kills a living creature, steals, commits sexual misconduct, or lies, goes to a place of loss, to hell. You're led on by what you usually live by. So led on, Bhante Bodhi says, is led on as well. So this is talking about after death. It's your destination after death. So then the Lord Buddha asks, he responds, you're led on by what you usually live by. If this were true, then according to what the Jain Nyatika says, no one would go to a place of loss, to hell. What do you think, Chief? Take a person who kills living creatures. If we compare the periods of time during the day and night, which is more frequent, the occasions when they're killing or when they're not killing? The occasions when they're not killing are less frequent, while the occasions when they're the occasions when they're the occasions when they're killing are less frequent, while the occasions when they're not killing are more frequent. You're led on by what you usually live by. If this is true, this is the Lord Buddha speaking again. According to what the Jain ascetic Nyatika clan of the Nyatika clan says, no one would go to a place of loss or hell. So he repeats himself. And then he asks about the other forms of, I could say, misconduct or harmful conduct. So what do you think, Chief? Take a person who steals, take a person who commits sexual misconduct, take a person who lies. If we compare the periods of time during the day and night, which is more frequent, the occasion when they're lying or when they're not lying. And then the headman answers, the occasions when they're lying are less frequent, while the occasions when they're not lying are more frequent. So then the Lord Buddha repeats again, you're led on by what you usually live by. If this were true, then according to what the Jain Nyatika says, no one would go to a place of loss, to hell. But then the Lord Buddha continues, take some teacher who has this doctrine and view. So it seems like there are two different views. Everyone who kills a living creature, steals, commits sexual misconduct, or lies goes to a place of loss, to hell. So there's just anyone who's done that at all. And there's a disciple who is devoted to that teacher. They think, my teacher has this doctrine and view. Everyone who kills a living creature, steals, commits sexual misconduct, or lies goes to a place of loss, to hell. But I've killed living creatures. I've stolen. I've committed sexual misconduct or lied. They get the view, I too am going to a place of loss, to hell. Unless they give up that speech and thought and let go of that view, they will be cast down to hell. Here's where I'm going to insert Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So this person's reflecting on their behavior. Now I have destroyed life. I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. He does not abandon that assertion and that state of mind, and he does not relinquish that view. Then, according to his deserts, he will be as it were dropped off in hell. So that was more their literal, that they could just taken there. There's that expression, they wind up in hell as if they're taken there. And then it goes on with the other forms of harmful behavior. It occurs to him, my teacher holds such a doctrine and view as thus, anyone who takes what is not given, and that's stealing, is bound for a state of misery. And then it goes through anyone who engages in sexual misconduct. My teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this, anyone who speaks falsehood is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Now I have spoken falsehood. I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. He does not abandon that assertion. He will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. So he's hanging on to this view that anyone, if they've even, it sounds like even if they've just done it once. So what also occurs to me with this is that if you've committed some kind of harmful behavior that you feel will send you to hell, what's the motivation to stop doing it? You're going to go to hell anyway. So how are you motivated to change your behavior? And then the Lord Buddha changes. Let's see. I'll just read Bhikkhu Bodhis for a while. But here, headman, a Tathagata arises in the world, the Arhat, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teachers of devas and humans, enlightened one, the Blessed One. In many ways, he criticizes and censures the destruction of life. He says, abstain from the destruction of life. He criticizes and censures the taking of what is not given. He says, abstain from taking what is not given. He criticizes and censures sexual misconduct. And he says, abstain from sexual misconduct. He criticizes and censures false speech. And he says, abstain from false speech. So I think by now you may recognize this is 4 of the 5 precepts. And for some reason the use of intoxicants isn't mentioned here. But as most of us know, anyone who indulges in intoxicants will also engage in any or all of the harmful behaviors, other 4 harmful behaviors. So then a disciple has full confidence in that teacher. He reflects thus. In many ways, the Blessed One criticizes and censures the destruction of life. And he says, abstain from the destruction of life. Now I have destroyed life to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper. That wasn't good. But though I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. Having reflected thus, he abandons the destruction of life. He abstains from the destruction of life in the future. Thus, there comes about the abandoning of that evil deed. Thus, there comes about the transcending of that evil deed. So look at Bhante Sujato's So I'm going to skip down to the Lord Buddha has criticized and denounced the killing of living creatures and so on. And he says, stop killing living creatures. As Bhante Sujato has translated it. And he denounces stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, and says, stop lying. And there is a disciple who is devoted to that teacher. Then they reflect. In many ways, the Buddha criticizes and denounces killing living creatures, saying, stop killing living creatures. But I have killed living creatures to a certain extent. And I want to say here that it's also harming them. When you look at the Pali, it's actually harming, but it implies killing as well. So that is not good. And I feel remorseful because of it, but I can't undo what I have done. Reflecting like this, they give up killing living creatures. In the future, they don't kill living creatures. That's how they give up this bad deed and get past it. So this transcending or getting past is samattikama. And it says passing beyond or overcoming is the translation. So they overcome. They cease. They've given it up. They've felt remorse and they've made the decision to stop, and then they stop. In many ways, the Buddha criticizes and denounces stealing. And in many ways, the Buddha criticizes and denounces sexual misconduct. In many ways, the Buddha criticizes and denounces lying, saying, stop lying. But I have lied to a certain extent. That is not right. It's not good. I feel remorseful because of it, but I can't undo what I have done. Reflecting like this, they give up lying, and in the future, they refrain from lying. That's how they give up this bad deed and get past it. And then the same with the others, giving up killing, giving up stealing, giving up sexual misconduct. They give up lying. And then they're keeping the basic precepts. They don't mention abstaining from intoxicants, but let's just assume that's part of that. So they've given up lying, and then it gets more refined here. They give up divisive speech. They give up harsh speech. They give up talking nonsense. That's sampapalapa. That's useless speech or idle chatter. There's a number where that's translated. But Bhante Sujato says, talking nonsense. This useless speech. They give up covetousness. So covetousness is also longing, translated as longing. They give up ill will and malevolence. They give up wrong view and have right view. So they're going beyond just the abstaining from harmful behavior. They're also developing wholesome qualities here. They're refining their speech, and they're refining their mind as well. That noble disciple is rid of desire, rid of ill will, unconfused, aware, and mindful. They meditate, spreading a heart full of love in one direction, and to the second, and to the third, and to the fourth. In the same way, above, below, across, everywhere, all around, they spread a heart full of love to the whole world, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity, free of ill will. So this is a beautiful progression from abandoning unwholesome behavior and then developing the wholesome. So I'm going to read Bhante Bodhi's. So he goes through that whole reflection about how the harmful behavior was not good, and he's abandoned it. He, she, they have abandoned it. They come about abandoning that evil deed. Thus, there comes about a transcending of that evil deed. Having abandoned the destruction of life, he abstains from the destruction of life. Having abandoned the taking of what is not given, he abstains from the taking what is not given. Having abandoned sexual misconduct, he abstains from sexual misconduct. Having abandoned false speech, he abstains from false speech. Having abandoned divisive speech, he abstains from divisive speech. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. Having abandoned idle chatter, that's the sampapalapa, he abstains from idle chatter. Having abandoned covetousness, I think longing is also good. Covetousness is kind of an old-fashioned word. Having abandoned covetousness, he is uncovetous. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he has a mind without ill will. Having abandoned wrong view, he or she or they have right view. Then, headman, that noble disciple who is thus devoid of covetousness, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself or herself. They dwell, pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, vast, exalted, measureless, without hostility, without ill will. Just as a strong conch blower can easily send his signal to the four quarters, so too, when the liberation of mind by loving kindness is developed and cultivated in this way, any limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist there. There's a footnote here, but I won't read it yet. He dwells, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with compassion, with a mind imbued with altruistic joy, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to themselves, she, he, They dwell pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, exalted, measureless, without hostility, without ill will. Just as a strong conch blower can easily send his or her signal to the four quarters, so too, when the liberation of mind by equanimity is developed and cultivated in this way, any limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist there. When this was said, Asibandika Puta, the headman, said to the Blessed One, "Magnificent, Venerable Sir." And then there's the ellipsis, because there's a whole stock expression. "From today, let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone forth for refuge for life." So he becomes one of the disciples of the Buddha, and he's given up his association with the Niganthas. So let's see what time we do have. Yeah, I think there's a discussion about the limited karma. There's another sutta that talks about the same kind of thing with the Brahma Viharas. And this is what I like about Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's work, is that he's got these wonderful notes you can look up. Bodhisattva has a wonderful the Pali below, and you can get the translation of the Pali, some of it anyway. So he's done tremendous work too. Both of them are just really wonderful. Okay, does not persist there. 346. And then it's quite a long note. There's a reference to the Anguttara Nikaya, and I think that's the other place I've seen this talking about limited karma. And then the commentary says, when simple loving kindness is said, this can be interpreted either as access concentration or absorption, but when it is qualified as liberation of mind, ceto vimutti, it definitely means absorption. It is sense sphere karma that is called limited karma. So anything done in the sense sphere in this physical realm is limited, according to this. And form sphere karma is called limitless or measureless, apamana katam karma. This is called limitless because it is done by transcending the limit, for it is developed by way of specified, unspecified, and directional pervasion. This is from the Visuddhimagga. Does not remain there, does not persist there, na tam tatra va sisati, na tam tatra va titati. That sense sphere karma does not linger on, does not stay on in that form sphere. Formosphere karma. What is meant? That sense sphere karma is unable to overpower the form sphere or the formless sphere karma, or to persist and gain the opportunity to yield its own result. Rather, in a great flood, as a great flood might inundate a little stream, the form sphere and the formless sphere karma overpowers the sense sphere karma and remains after having made an opportunity for its own result. The superior karma, having prevented the sense sphere karma from producing its result on its own, leads to rebirth in the Brahma world. That's according to the commentaries. And I don't know if you made any sense of that. I think when another explanation is that when you're in those realms of existence, and that the form sphere karma isn't going to affect you, but if you fall to a lower birth after spending time in the Brahma realm, then it still might catch up to you, depending on what it was. And to me, when I'm looking at the sutta, when you just look at the sutta at face value, when you've gone through that renouncing the behavior and then restraining and refraining, then you're transcending, you're changing your karma. And then you're cultivating a heart of loving kindness, and you're cultivating wisdom, and you're cultivating other wholesome states. Then those states are going to be the inclination of your mind and how you're behaving for however much longer you're living. So I think that would, I don't know if it entirely makes up for some harmful behavior, depending on probably a lot of things. There's what's a 6, I'm looking for help for someone who's, who can I remember, there's 6 harmful breaches of the precepts, like of killing an arahant and killing your mother or your father, wounding a Buddha, causing a schism in the Sangha. Is that 6?
No, I always forget the last.
There's one someone. What is it?
I thought there were only 5. Are there 6?
I thought there were 6. But anyway, so there's some behaviors that you have to work through, that you can't avoid there being some repercussions, and it blocks you from sotapanna, from becoming a sotapanna. But it's easy to get distracted by that detail at the end. And I think what's really important about this sutta is the fact that we can change our behavior. We can abandon unwholesome behavior. And it doesn't have, I think for most of us, what we've done, if we stop doing it, then we're overcoming it in that way. And the karma, we may still have karmic consequences in this life. For instance, if you've killed another human being, that's pretty serious, and it's either depending on how it happened, whether it was or if it was intentional, then there's civil law that you can't escape. So anyway, I'm getting into the discussion, seeing if there's any questions. And did you have a question, or yes?
What's the difference between the sense?
There's sense sphere and
sense sphere in the form sphere.
Yeah, the form and formless. That's the jhanas, or for some reason they're called form. There's I guess there's still some kind of idea of form in the jhanas, even though they've pulled away from the senses. And then there's equivalents in the Brahma realms, and then there's the formless attainments, and there's those are spheres of immaterial spheres, like infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. So those are much higher states that can be attained in meditation. So if you're reborn in any of those spheres, then the sense sphere, karma couldn't affect you there. But I've always heard that if you fall from those realms to back to human or animal realm, I mean, you may be, depending on the karma, you might still need to be working through some of it. So, did that answer your question? So there's a suit saying, "Dear," oh, here I'll put it, show it. It says, "Dear Ayya, it seems like Brahma Viharas are a natural result of ending conceit of self." Excuse me. Is that an appropriate way to understand the sequence as to why the Buddha mentions letting go of conceit first? I don't know that he specifically talks about letting go of conceit. He says he has right view. He's abandoned unwholesome behaviors of body, speech, and mind. He or she or they. Devoid of covetousness, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful. To me, what this is telling me is that in order to really practice the Brahma Viharas, we need to abandon unwholesome behavior, keep the precepts, and really purify our minds, at least have some purity of mind when we embark on the practice. Like some teachers talk about, doing a certain amount of meditation to purify the mind, to let go of the unwholesome mental states before we start to practice the Brahma Viharas. This is a recommendation I've heard more than once. Letting go of self could go into the right view. They have right view. Conceit of self happens. Letting go of the conceit of I am happens. It's that anagami still has the conceit of I am. So you have to be arhat to have let go of the conceit of I am. But we're heading in that direction. I think when you are letting go of the unwholesome mental states, a lot of that has to do with self-clinging. And developing the wholesome states is certainly going to be of a more expansive state of mind and not so limited to this clinging to self. But once you've exited if it's a liberation of mind that's just during that period of time, during the jhana that from the Brahma Vihara, then when you exit that jhana, then you still have the conceit of I am, but maybe to a lesser degree. You have a little bit of a window to see beyond this limited self. And then she's asking further. Thank you for the clarification. What does it mean here when the Buddha mentions letting go of covetousness. Covetousness is longing. And I haven't looked at the dictionary, but I was raised Christian. The idea of wanting something that's not yours, coveting something is a desire for something that's inappropriate or not yours to have. So it's stronger than just a kind of a random, oh, I'd like some ice cream or something like that. It's like, I have to, at all costs, I'm going to have it, and it might be, it's just often talk about coveting thy neighbor's wife is what this is a commandment that thou shalt not have a desire for someone else's spouse. So it is an old-fashioned term, but it might be meaningful in that we're wishing for something that's inappropriate, wishing for something that would be harmful for us to pursue another person or a relationship with someone that's not appropriate. But the word that's translated as covetousness, abijja, is translated as longing as well. Longing for covetousness. Letting go of it. So we're letting go of desire, especially for things that aren't appropriate. And this could be for a period of time. I mean, like preparing the mind to enter the Brahma Viharas. But I think the more we're abandoning unwholesome mental states, the more our mind will incline towards the wholesome and be free from the unwholesome. See, I think that's... I see something in another script, and I'm sorry I can't read that script. But this is Sadhu from Nepal, the Buddha's birthplace. That's very beautiful. Did you have another question? Yeah, I don't. Sir, go ahead.
Sort of a two-parter.
Pardon me?
It's sort of a two-parter. When you're in fourth jhana and is it that you're able to see the formless sphere, or are you in it?
I can't really answer that, but she's asking about the formless sphere. That's still according to the teachings, is still in the form. Yeah, but I think people can exit from the fourth jhana to the formless. I mean, there's a progression, but that's not in that.
The second part of the question is, how do you create karma in the formless sphere?
How would one create karma in the formless sphere? At that point, karma is action. So I don't think you'd be creating any new karma in the formless sphere.
The reason I ask is because of the simile of the flood over the stream. What does the flood represent then?
Well, that would be the mental state. That if you have an exalted, expanded mental state, then you wouldn't be affected by the karma that you created in the sense sphere, is the idea. But especially if you've refrained from that kind of behavior, you've stopped. But I don't think it's. I think if you're engaging in unwholesome behavior, then you wouldn't be able to enter the. I mean, it would be much more difficult anyway, because the mind is still has a lot of attachment, and also attachment and aversion, so you wouldn't be able to enter the Brahma Viharas, at least at any depth. That's my understanding anyway. Someone might argue that. But. Okay, there's a few more that come in. They're underneath. I didn't see. It says Venerable Bhikkhu. Whoops. Oh, let's see if I can just, because it's popping around. If we understand view, craving, ignorance, craving, sense pleasures, cravings, and cravings of existence perfect, then we get nirvana. Am I right? Well, we can understand them, but unless we've completely abandoned and overcome with wisdom, ignorance, cravings, craving out of ignorance, I'm not sure. So certainly understanding them deeply is an important step in abandoning them. Sometimes we just have to see it clearly for a while before we're able to let go. And to be able to see Nibbana, I don't think I'm qualified to really talk about that right now. But certainly letting go of craving, sense pleasures, and craving for existence. If they've totally destroyed them, this is the destruction of the taint. So if you completely destroy them, it's said that you're arhat, so then you would see Nibbana. Okay. So, dear Ayya, if possible, can you clarify what it means to imbue loving kindness in the first quarter, second, etc.? Oh, does one sit down and imagine spreading loving kindness? Well, there's pervading, and there's your heart is imbued. So you have to start out with your own heart being imbued with loving kindness. And I made up the simile where you have a pump, and it's down into a well. You have this shaft that goes down into a well, and you just put the shaft into the well and put the pump on the top, and you start pumping vigorously, but you're not getting any water. And why is that? It's because there's an airlock. The shaft is empty. So then you have to take water that you have up on the surface and fill up the shaft. Then you start pumping, then you get water. So if your heart is empty, if you don't have loving kindness to start with, if your heart isn't imbued with it, and this is towards yourself, then you can't pervade it outwards. But if you've been imbuing your heart with loving kindness and also bringing up the thoughts of loving kindness, doing actively, getting the feeling, the emotion, the caring, even if you're only doing that towards yourself, eventually that just starts to overflow. And there is some instruction to really kind of use somewhat of your imagination, where you're extending it outwards to pervading it outwards. But there's got to be this real feeling in your heart, and this real expansive feeling of the heart, and really, I know people say they can feel it when people there's certain individuals that really have powerful metta, and people can really feel it. They can sense it. So some of it may be your imagination, but some of it's, I think there's this really felt sense that can be picked up by other people. And a lot of people swear by its healing power. It can heal not only illness, but relationships. So, but there is kind of you could say kind of a visualization or imagination where you are extending it outwards, but there really needs to be more as well, a really strong felt sense of it expanding outwards. So I start by imbuing oneself with the loving kindness, and then one is able to pervade. I don't know if I missed. No, I don't think I missed anything. Anyone else have a comment or question or correction? Yes.
Sometimes I wonder when I read these suttas, when someone's talked to the Buddha and they're convinced of these ideas and their sound right view, why they wouldn't, rather than commit themselves as lay disciples, become bhikkhus.
Someone here is asking why someone has had this conversation with the Buddha, and they're favorably impressed, and they become a lay disciple. Why don't they just go forth into monastic life? Could be they have a family. Could be there was this one unfortunate. He was a leader of another sect. Do you remember that one? Where I said, it appears in the Majjhima Nikaya. I can't remember his name, but he receives a teaching from the Buddha, and I think they are having kind of a debate, and then he convinces this other person, and he wants to go forth, and then his students are saying, no, you can't do that. Do you remember that? You know the name of the sutta? We can't remember. Yeah, so there's various reasons why responsibilities are often the Brahmins they'll become a lay disciple, but they won't give up their station in life. So I don't know. Yeah, I wonder too sometimes. Wow, they had the Buddha there. What an opportunity. They weren't quite ready in that lifetime. Maybe in this lifetime, they may appear in another lifetime and we're able to go forth. But so. I think that may be it. Unless there's any, I don't see any other questions. Anyone else have a comment or question? So thank you all for your time. So I guess we could, did you want to make an announcement?
Oh, well, I'd like to sadhu your talk, if I may. Hantamayang Tamakataya Sadhu Karang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Sadhu to all of you too. Thank you all for your time. And
Could do announcements if you want.
would you want to announce?
Sure. So this evening we have Monk Chat as usual, live stream Monk Chat at 7:30 p.m. And tomorrow the public Dhamma program here at Empty Cloud Monastery from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And on Sunday also the regular Dhamma program from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. All open to the public and free. All are welcome.
Do you want to mention who's leading those?
Let's see. So Monk Chat this evening, I think it will be Bhante J and myself, Bhante Wade. And for the Saturday evening program, it is Bhante J, if I remember correctly. And Sunday, it will be me, Bhante Wade.
So you're all welcome to attend if you're able to. Goodbye for